If you Google how much is a divorce going to cost in Texas, the AI generated stuff up front will tell you, if you got kids, about $23,500. And you may be going, what? How is that possible? And I have some bad news. It can actually cost a whole lot more of that because fighting costs extra. That's something we say at the firm all of the time. Really, the cost of your divorce to a large extent is in you and the X Factor's hands. Y'all gonna be decent about it? You're gonna agree as much as possible, be conciliatory, like nice and kind of get along? If so, then you can get it done for a lot cheaper. If y'all gonna fight over who pays for soccer cleats for 2 weeks, your divorce is not gonna cost you $23,500, okay? So you are in the driver's seat when it comes to your case, you and your spouse. And like, look, bad news. Your fates are tied together, and you got kids, they're tied together forever. Anyway, this is not a surprise to you. It really takes two to tango when it comes to working together and keeping costs down. It only takes one to cause a big old fight. It just is what it is. And the reason why fighting costs extra is there's more information from lawyers, maybe more hearings, more discovery requests, like experts. It can get really expensive really fast. So if at all possible, if you two can try to work together and get to some terms and agree to put the kids first and agree not to spend a fortune on lawyers, that's your best bet for containing those costs. People ask me, okay, what's the cheapest I can get this done for? We were driving actually last night and saw this sign on the side of the road that says divorces, $349. And I'm like, if they can get you a divorce for $349, you better call them. And it depends on the complexity of the situation, of how much it's gonna cost. I mean, typically, if y'all are really pretty agreed, you have all of the terms, and you just need the lawyers to file the initial paperwork, draft the decree, and get it entered, I think you're looking at $4,000 or $5,000 to get that part done. And then it goes up from there. Really, this is just the way the process works. You can do some things to try to keep the cost down as best you can, but nobody gets divorced because it's a cheap thing to do, for sure. To understand how assets and debts are divided in Texas, I want to take you back to elementary school. And y'all remember the number line with the integers? And it's like there's a 0 in the middle, and then you're sort of like -10, 0, and then all the way up to +10. That's the way I think about the way community and separate property works in Texas. So I want you to think of the 0 on the number line as the date of marriage. Everything on the negative integer side is separate property. Everything on the positive side would be community property. Okay, so community property, let's talk about that for a second. That's everything that's like as a result of your toil during the marriage. Did it come from your job? Or did it come from actually income on separate property? Did it come from work? It doesn't matter whose job it came from. Did either of y'all earn it during the marriage? Then it's both of y'all's in community property. Now, let's go back in time. So if it happened prior to marriage, it's separate property, like all the money you had when you got married up to that date of marriage. It's just yours. You come in with it, you should be able to take it out with you if you protect it correctly. It's a whole other thing. Also in separate property would be things from gift or inheritance. And people often mess it up at that point. Like they'll get a gift or inheritance and dump it into the community property accounts, and then it gets all spent and commingled and like a tangled web of Christmas lights kind of thing. But if you can keep those two things separate, it can help you protect them in the future. But that's the basic system of how it works. Probably the number one thing that stresses people out about divorce after stuff with their kids is the money. Like, how am I going to pay for this? What's going to happen? Am I going to get my fair share? Is he or she going to have to pay because they did XYZ to me? And underlying all of that, I think, is fear, right? They say there's two basic emotions, fear and love. And when we're talking about money, we're probably talking about fear. And I think a lot of what we're afraid of is fear of the unknown. Because when you're getting divorced, you're taking this huge, brave step into the unknown. I can't help but think of Elsa in Frozen 2, like into the unknown. So you're going into the unknown, and that's stressful, and that's scary, and that's hard. And I think acknowledging that, naming it to tame it, like, hey, this is scary. Hey, I feel overwhelmed. I'm not sure how this is going to work. It's sort of the first step And then the next piece is just getting a strategy and a plan. I know it makes me feel better. Like if I'm ever stressed out, I want to get a pen and paper and make a list. I need a plan. A plan always makes me feel better. I bet it would make you feel better too. Of like, okay, instead of this ethereal money question up in the ether, right? Let's pull that down and like, okay, what exactly are you afraid of? You're not sure if you're going to be able to pay your rent. Okay, that question we can deal with. Let's look at the numbers. You may want to work with a financial planner sort of person who specializes in divorce in particular. And maybe they can support you in figuring out, all right, can you afford the rent? And then the facts are the facts. Maybe yes, maybe no. That may guide you in the settlement you take ultimately in your divorce. But I think like understanding it's scary, accepting that, and then making a plan to address the reality of what is the best way you can try to manage that anxiety throughout the divorce process. To avoid common financial pitfalls in divorce, probably the number one thing you can do is keep what's separate, and what's y'all's. Okay, so in Texas, that's the way the law works. There's community thing y'all earn during the marriage, and there's separate thing before the marriage, except for gifts and inheritance. Keeping those two things separate could save you God knows how much money. And here's what I mean, because like people will get an inheritance. That's a separate property. Look, honey, that's your money. If your grandma left it to you, it's for you. Okay, so that's money that if you could put it in a separate account, and you may use it for things like a vacation, you may decide to put a deck on the house or whatever, then you make that choice, but it keeps it separate. So say you're really fortunate, you got $100,000 when your grandma died or whatever, and you got $100,000 over here. Okay, if you spent even $50,000 on the new deck, you still maintain the $50,000 in the separate account. This other $50,000 enriched the property of the value of the house, and it's a whole other thing, but you can pretty much count that money as gone. But you've still maintained the 50. And then if you ever get divorced, you should be able to take that out. Versus if you just dump it all in the community, and y'all know, we all spend how much money we got. So like however much money is in there, it may dwindle down and you haven't protected it. So that's a common pitfall that I think you could address relatively simply. And I say that simply on paper. In real life, you're married, you get a big chunk of money, your family unit will probably see that as y'all's. So I think it's just up to us in modern marriages to understand how things work. And like, look, if you get the other person gets a big inheritance, that's their money. Like, let them put that in a different account. Respect the way that it works, I think, could be a big thing. The other big common pitfall that people make in the divorce process that affects their finances would be fighting over stuff that doesn't matter and not keeping the main thing. Fighting costs extra in divorce. So if you blow up every little tiny thing into some whole big drama and on matters of principle and whatever, you're going to spend a fortune in fees. And so keeping laser focused on the things that are most important to you can save a ton of money. And then I think the third thing that can help you save a bunch of money is at the end of your divorce, get it done. At our law firm at Hembree Law, we set up what's called a closing department. And when you get material terms, like the main stuff, either from a judge or mediation in your divorce, we set a deadline by which we're going to court if we don't have the orders entered. And this, like, look, that may not sound like that much to you, but it's hugely important because what we realized is a lot of divorces languish in Never Never Land. Once the divorce is finished, it may go on for 6 months, 9 months, years even, before it's finally done. And when they take forever, you end up spending a lot more in money. So we're like, in fees. So we're like, look, we're going to set a 90-day timeline by which this is going to get done one way or the other. So if you're in a situation where you have a mediated settlement agreement in Texas, but it's still not done, I, in general, would recommend set it, get it over with, because what can happen is lawyers can get trapped in this circle of like informal resolution. Here's our draft of the decree. Here's your draft of the decree. We have these changes, you have those changes. And each one of those has like 3 or 4 business days in between. And then it just stacks up and takes forever. So the tail end of your divorce, when you're ready to be over and done and stop paying fees, you went to mediation. So you already think you're done anyway, right? You're very not done. You're only to third base, but you think you're done. And it can take forever and cost you so much more. So those are some common mistakes you can try to avoid and save fees in your divorce. So if you'd like to talk to a legal team about how you can be efficient when you're spending money and fees in your divorce and how to avoid the common pitfalls, reach out to us to schedule a free case evaluation at Hembree Bell Law, where we help marriages end well, and we can help you think through how to be smart with your money, honey.